January 30th, 1933, a date that would seal the fate of millions. Adolf Hitler seizes power as Germany's chancellor, and democracy dies overnight. What follows is a descent into authoritarianism, propaganda, and terror. Basic freedoms vanish. Arbitrary arrests become routine. The Third Reich transforms Germany into a police state where one wrong word could mean death. But not everyone bowed down. Among those who dared to resist was a 21-year-old student named Sophie Scholl. Her story isn't just about courage, it's about the price of truth in a world consumed by lies. If you believe standing up for what's right matters, even when it costs everything, then subscribe to Timeless World right now. Hit that notification bell, because stories like Sophie's deserve to be remembered. Let's dive in. The girl who refused to follow. Sophie Magdalena Scholl entered the world on May 9, 1921 in Forchtenberg, Germany. She was the fourth of 6 children born to Robert and Magdalena Scholl. Her father Robert served as the town's mayor, and the family practiced their Lutheran faith devoutly. Life seemed normal when the family relocated to Ulm in 1932, where Robert launched a tax and accounting firm. But the world around them was crumbling. The Great Depression had devastated economies globally, and Germany suffered particularly severe consequences. Unemployment skyrocketed, hunger spread, desperation poisoned the air. Into this chaos stepped Adolf Hitler, offering simple answers to complex problems. He blamed Jews for Germany's suffering. He promised strength, unity, and a return to greatness. Millions of desperate Germans listened. The seduction of youth. When Hitler took power in 1933, Robert Scholl watched in horror as his own children, including Sophie and her brother Hans, joined Nazi youth organizations. Sophie became part of the League of German Girls, while Hans joined the Hitler Youth. These weren't just after-school clubs, they were indoctrination machines. Membership exploded from 100,000 in January 1933 to over 2 million by year's end. Jewish children weren't allowed to join, the first of countless exclusions they would face. Led by Baldur von Schirach, these organizations consumed young lives. Members wore identical uniforms, they sang the same Nazi anthems, they marched in massive rallies. By 1935, Hans even served as a standard-bearer at Nuremberg's Reich Party rally, one of the regime's most spectacular propaganda events. The time commitment was crushing, designed deliberately to weaken family bonds and religious influence. Children learned to report on their parents, neighbors, even their teachers. Individual thought was the enemy. Conformity was everything. The awakening. Sophie initially embraced the movement, even rising to squad leader in 1935. But something shifted. Both she and Hans began seeing through the facade. They recognized the Nazi youth organizations for what they truly were, tools of control, not liberation. Their father Robert had always taught them 2 fundamental values, integrity and freedom of thought. These principles clashed violently with Nazi ideology. In 1936, a new law declared the Hitler Youth the only legal youth organization in Germany. Every young person fell under Nazi control. But the Scholl siblings refused to stay silent. In 1937, Hans and his friends were arrested for participating in the German youth movement, a group that valued idealism, individualism, and moral courage over Nazi conformity. During his trial, authorities even charged Hans under paragraph 175, Germany's law criminalizing homosexuality between men. The judge dismissed these charges as youthful failing, but the message was clear: dissent meant danger. The night everything changed. November 9, 1938, Crystal Night, the night of broken glass. Nazi stormtroopers and ordinary citizens unleashed coordinated violence against Jews throughout Germany. They ransacked homes, demolished businesses, burned synagogues, and destroyed schools. Nearly 30,000 Jewish men were dragged to concentration camps. Sophie witnessed the aftermath. She watched as her Jewish friends faced persecution. Artists she admired were condemned as degenerate. Modern art she loved was confiscated and destroyed. The Nazis held exhibitions mocking these works, drawing over 2 million visitors who came to jeer at creativity deemed sick and immoral. Nazi legislation banned Jews from schools, universities, theaters, and public spaces. In many cities, entire zones became forbidden to Jewish residents. Sophie was horrified. Her choice of friends became a political statement. She surrounded herself with those who still valued humanity over ideology. War and resistance. September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, igniting World War II. Sophie had told her sister months earlier, "I hope someone will stand up to Hitler." By spring 1940, Sophie had graduated and become a kindergarten teacher, hoping to avoid mandatory Reich labor service.
In 1941, the regime conscripted her anyway, forcing her to work 76-hour weeks supporting the war machine. May 1942 brought a turning point. Sophie enrolled at Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich to study biology and philosophy. Her brother Hans was already there studying medicine. That same month, their father Robert was imprisoned for 4 months after calling Hitler the scourge of God at work. The White Rose blooms. At university, Hans met fellow students Willi Graf, Alexander Schmorell, and Christoph Probst. They shared what they'd witnessed, horrors that would haunt them forever. Graf had seen the Warsaw Ghetto, where over 400,000 Jews were crammed into a tiny district. Daily food rations for Jews totaled just 184 calories, compared to 2,613 for Germans. An official order stated Jewish provisions must be less than the minimum necessary for preserving life, regardless of the consequences. Over 80,000 Jews died from starvation, disease, and despair. Children begged in streets lined with corpses. When Operation Barbarossa launched on June 22, 1941, Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, Graf, Schmorell, and Hans were deployed as medics. They witnessed unspeakable atrocities committed by SS forces in the Wehrmacht. Mass shootings, brutal treatment of prisoners, the systematic murder of Jews and Roma people. These experiences changed them fundamentally. They couldn't remain silent. In April 1942, they formed the White Rose Resistance Movement. Words as weapons. From June to mid-July 1942, they produced their first 4 leaflets. Each grew bolder, more critical of Hitler and German complicity. They denounced the murder of hundreds of thousands of Poles. They demanded an end to the war. They begged Germans to resist. They distributed these leaflets creatively, tucking them into phone books, mailing them to professors, smuggling them to other universities. They targeted intellectuals, believing educated Germans would respond to reason and moral arguments. In summer 1942, male students were ordered to the Eastern Front. Hans, Schmorell, and Graf served as medics in Russia, witnessing even more horrors. Schmorell spoke Russian, allowing him to communicate with locals who described German atrocities in devastating detail. Their resolve hardened. When Sophie discovered her brother's activities in fall 1942, she didn't hesitate. She joined immediately. Professor Kurt Huber, beloved for refusing to push Nazi propaganda in his lectures, joined in December. The final campaign. January 1943. The 5th leaflet, Appeal to All Germans, was produced in up to 9,000 copies. It asked devastating questions. Do you and your children want to suffer the same fate that befell the Jews? Are we to be forever a nation hated and rejected by all mankind? It declared Hitler's defeat inevitable. Hitler cannot win the war, he can only prolong it. The guilt of Hitler and his minions goes beyond all measure. Retribution comes closer and closer. Days later, on February 2, 1943, Germany suffered catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad. Nearly 91,000 German soldiers surrendered after months of brutal fighting. The White Rose members hoped this would spark widespread resistance. They were wrong. Nazi propaganda twisted defeat into a rallying cry for total war. In early February, Schmorell, Hans, and Graf spray-painted slogans on public buildings. Hitler the mass murderer, down with Hitler, freedom. They produced their 6th leaflet, their last. The End and the Beginning. February 18, 1943, Hans and Sophie distributed leaflets at their university. In a final act of defiance, Sophie threw the remaining copies from the top floor into the atrium below, where they scattered like snow. Jacob Schmed, a maintenance worker and devoted Nazi, saw everything. He reported them to the Gestapo immediately. For his betrayal, Schmed received 3,000 Reichsmarks, blood money. Under interrogation, authorities offered Sophie a reduced sentence if she'd blame Hans for leading her astray. Her response was steel. I won't betray my brother or my principles. I will make no bargain with the Nazis. Christoph Probst was arrested 2 days later when he went to collect his Pesach before visiting his wife and newborn daughter, a daughter he would never hold. The People's Court. February 22, 1943, Sophie, Hans, and Christoph faced Roland Freisler, the notorious hanging judge of the Nazi People's Court. 90% of his trials ended in death sentences. In the courtroom, Sophie shocked everyone by confronting Freisler directly. Somebody, after all, had to make a start. What we wrote and said is also believed by many others. They just don't dare express themselves as we did. After a half-day trial, a mockery of justice, all 3 were convicted of treason and sentenced to death. Not in days or weeks, that same day. Originally scheduled for public hanging, the Nazis feared creating martyrs. Instead, they chose the guillotine, hidden away in
Stadelheim Prison's execution chamber. Sophie and Hans were allowed brief final moments with their parents. Sophie smiled, actually smiled, happy to see them one last time. Hans told them he felt no hatred. To her cellmate Elsa Gabel, Sophie spoke her final words of hope. "What does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" The final hour, 5 p.m. Sophie walked to the guillotine with her head held high. At 21 years old, she faced death without flinching. Her last words, "The sun still shines." Minutes later, Hans and Christoph followed. While Sophie and Christoph died silently, Hans shouted his final declaration, "Long live freedom." They tried to protect their friends by accepting all blame, but it failed. Alexander Schmorell, Willi Graf, and Kurt Huber were arrested in late February. Huber and Schmorell died by guillotine in July 1943. Graf endured 6 months of psychological torture as the Gestapo tried to extract names of other resistance members. He never broke. He was executed in October 1943. Their words live on. After Sophie's death, the 6th White Rose leaflet was smuggled to England. In July 1943, the Royal Air Force dropped millions of copies over Germany, retitled The Manifesto of the Students of Munich. The Nazis tried to silence them. Instead, they made them immortal. Legacy of courage. Today, schools across Germany bear Sophie's name. Streets honor her memory alongside Hans and the other White Rose members. Their story stands as eternal testimony to a simple truth. Some principles matter more than survival. Sophie Scholl wasn't a superhero. She was a 21-year-old student who saw evil and refused to look away. She understood something many never learn, that silence in the face of injustice is itself a form of complicity. In our world today, we face different challenges, but the question remains the same. What will you do when confronted with injustice? Will you speak up even when it's dangerous? Will you stand for truth when lies are easier? Sophie's answer cost her everything, but her courage echoes across decades, reminding us that one person, one voice can matter. Here at Timeless World, we tell stories that matter, because history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding who we are and who we can become. If Sophie's story moved you, subscribe right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell us about modern heroes who inspire you. And if you can, support us through the donation link in the description so we can keep bringing you stories of courage that the world needs to remember. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and never forget, the sun still shines.